If it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
All right, welcome back to the Out of Bounds podcast. Josh Durso and Nate Sharman here, getting you ready for the Scottish Open. We're also going to look at the last weekend in professional golf. We got the U.S. Women's Open, Sepp Straka winning the John Deere, and Cam Smith winning at Liv London. Nate, it's been like a week and a half here. 4th of July, your quote-unquote favorite golf weekend of the year. Came and went. I went down to Hilton Head, didn't touch a golf club for about 7 days. It was the best 7 days of my life. How'd your favorite weekend of golf play out?
So if you remember that last podcast, we were talking about July 4th, I said the weather is generally good. I wasn't really right on that. It did rain a lot, a good amount, or more so than it usually does here in the July 4th area, but still was able to play a good amount of golf, little resets by the pool, hang out with some family here and there. So overall, was a good weekend. Not perfect banner 4th of July weather, but good enough. We'll take it. Josh, looked like a lot of fun down there in Hilton Head. One of your favorite places to go. Didn't get a chance to play on the golf course, huh? Did
not touch a golf club. The closest thing to it, I guess, would be we played a little mini golf while we were down there.
We got to play Harbor Town one of these years. That looks like would be a lot of fun course. I think I'd lose some serious amounts of golf balls, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, not only you and me both. That is a different kind of golf course. But yeah, it was awesome. Good vacation. Our friends got engaged. It was awesome. All the way awesome around. Stuff. And of course, we talk about it a little bit here in the Northeast. A lot of people complain about when the weather gets really hot and humid. Some people say, I don't want to go play golf here in the Northeast when it's 85, 90 degrees and humid. Let me tell you, Hilton Head in July, golf courses were absolutely mobbed. And it was about 95 degrees with 95% humidity and dew points around 80. And like I said, golf courses were absolutely mobbed. I think it's just an appreciation for the kind of weather we have up here. But let me tell you, those warmer climates, people still play golf. 5.5, 6 hour rounds of golf. From what I talked to some locals while I was down there, they said 5.5, 6 hour rounds of golf. That happens. So, golf.
Just me thinking about the area, not knowing a ton about it, Josh, but if I had to guess, it'd probably be hard to get on some of those golf courses, during those prime times when it's a little bit lower temperature and different times of the year. So if you want to play, you got to go play when it's 90 plus degrees out and high humidity, but you bring a couple bottles of water with you, maybe a towel to kind of cool off and you're fine. Maybe you have a blue light too to enjoy yourself, but got to have that water in the water bottle and just keep it moving and play some golf.
Yeah. And don't worry, you're not going to find any blue light down there because trying to find blue light in South Carolina is like trying to find a needle in a haystack, unfortunately.
No Genesee Ruby Red then either.
No Ruby Red either. All of our favorite upstate New York staples in the beer department are notably absent from the island. All right, let's get things rolling here with our three biggest stories, and we're going to start here with the biggest non-golf golf news that we keep having to talk about week in and week out. We had the Senate hearing yesterday. A few big takeaways after watching a good chunk of that and reading through some of the transcripts online. First, addressing some of the questions folks have thrown out on social media. Yesterday's hearing was the only one that's scheduled to this point. My guess is there's going to at least be one more after we have a more concrete version of the framework agreement in place. Another question we've seen is what role do these Senate hearings have in actually determining whether Liv, PIF, PGA Tour, all these different entities can come together and merge? None, really. So it's basically part of evidence collection, if you want to think of it as an investigation. But in terms of what Senate hearings like yesterday was, it's really nothing more than political theater. So in order to get to the next step, we need something more concrete than the framework agreement that we have right now. That agreement will be submitted to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and the DOJ, who share oversight of mergers and acquisitions here in the U.S. Again, they will not be analyzing a framework agreement like the one that we saw come out about a month and a half ago. They will be analyzing a legit, a real merger, a real acquisition type document. They will be the ones who give the final yes or no. And we are no closer after yesterday to getting to that point than we were 48 hours ago. So yesterday was really just first time in the sunlight, I guess, for PGA Tour leadership to kind of explain their thinking on why this is the right move. To that end, we had PGA Tour CEO Ron Price and board member Jimmy Dunn, who's been called the architect of this deal, answering questions for roughly 3 hours. That's how long the hearing lasted. Obviously, not a ton of talk time for them individually. There was also a lot of, I'll call it grandstanding, but grandstanding from elected officials in Congress who were giving their position on why the PGA Tour should not take this deal. Like we knew before, the PGA Tour kind of screwed here because they are losing an extraordinary amount of money. And if this deal were to be blocked, professional golf would cease to exist as we know it, right? So that's just kind of a fact at this point. And a lot of the details that we saw come out yesterday related to how much money the PGA Tour has been losing paint that picture pretty clearly. Early parts of talks apparently involved Rory and Tiger owning a live team and playing in 10-ish events per year, live events, that is. Given what we know about everything, that's obviously not going to happen. I'm not sure what what Tiger or Rory's stake in this new entity will be, but it's certainly not going to involve Tiger Woods playing in 10 plus events plus the 4 majors. Just a firm no there. Another interesting detail that came out, 2 PIF or Aramco elevated events on the PGA Tour schedule. Sounds like the same goes for the DP World Tour. Yasser Al-Rumayyan getting membership to the RNA as well as Augusta. Those feel like I feel like those are locks. Those things are not that big a deal in the grand scheme of professional golf or business or anything else for that matter. Interesting, I guess, to show what I guess it's interesting because it showcases what Al-Rumayyan is kind of looking for personally out of this deal. So beyond what the PIF and the Saudis will gain from being embedded in a legitimate business, legitimate American business, the kind of personal part of what he wants out of this as well. And then naturally the other thing, there were no PIF reps, including Al-Rumayyan, at the hearing yesterday. And as per usual in American politics, disagreement fell pretty firmly across party lines. Republicans were a little more open and supportive to the idea. Democrats were more strongly opposed. But again, I kind of just want to hit back on it. This does not change anything about where we are in the actual process of merging all of these entities together. We're no closer than we were before the Senate hearing to getting some kind of real deal ironed out. So that's that.
Yeah, the largest thing that came out of this to me, Josh, is just kind of confirmed a lot of what we already sort of knew. We kind of knew that the PGA Tour kind of had their backs up against the wall. They're a company that has a little over $1 billion. I think it's around $1.4 billion they're valued at in their assets. And the PIF, they have about $700 billion. Yeah. So if we were to continue to do what we've been doing for the last 2 years, the PIF is just going to win. They're going to eventually squeeze out the PGA Tour, grab 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 golfers a year and just squeezing them out. And so this just kind of had to happen, right? This is something we came on here and we talked about a couple weeks ago or a month ago now, maybe, about how it's maybe not the best option for the world of golf, right? Obviously being involved with these types of people isn't ideal, but it kind of had to happen. It's a way that professional golf is sort of saved to be in the realms of controlled by the PGA Tour, because throughout the framework of this agreement, it seems like, the Saudis and the PIF are very on tune with the PGA Tour and saying, we don't want to control it. Wants to be something we want it to be controlled by you guys and run by you guys, but backed up by us and kind of an agreement that way too. So as this progress has kind of happened, I've kind of flipped a little bit and really want this to happen, because in my mind, if this doesn't happen, like you said, Josh, professional golf ceases to exist as we know it if this does not occur. So it just kind of confirms my, kind of thinking and how the PGA Tour and how Jimmy Dunn was thinking going through this process. A couple more thoughts, about Tiger and Rory having to play in 10-ish live events a year and own a team. That's just ludicrous. Tiger Woods is not going to play in 10 live events next year, and Rory McIlroy is definitely not playing in 10 live events next year. I think if you told Rory McIlroy he has to play in 10 events next year, he just puts his clubs away and keeps keepsaking, plays at Oak Hill for the rest of his life, right? Doesn't need to play any more professional golf, but that's just kind of the way Rory is. So that's a little bit outlandish that they'd even think about that, but yeah, they're good. Kudos to them for trying, but I don't see how that ever happens. And the last thing, Josh, before I turn it back to you, you got to really admire Yasir for really wanting, I guess, membership at Augusta, right? Because if anyone else is in that position, you or I or any of us, we would want that too. So kudos to him for gaining access to Augusta. It looks like that's going to happen too. So Yasir is going to be able to play down in Augusta, Georgia. That's cool.
I think the part that sticks out to me is just how kind of like amusing and I almost feel like it's petty. Like, of all of the really big important things that are going on right now in the world of professional golf with regard to the PIF, Saudis, DP World Tour, PGA Tour, and Liv, membership for one guy to Augusta is just like the littlest, most minor thing in it just doesn't matter. Like, I understand the golf elitists, I guess, will think it's really important in one way or another, whether he is or is not a member at Augusta. But look, 99.99999% of the golfing population, golf consumers, and frankly, humans in general, will not give a rat's tail whether this guy is a member or not at Augusta, or who is a member at Augusta or not. Because aside from the Masters, nobody actually cares who's a member at Augusta other than members at Augusta.
Yep,
just saying.
Sure. No, you're exactly right there, Josh. But.
Yeah. The only other note I'd add to all of this is just kind of it cannot be stressed enough that I think this does kind of put golf in a spot where it's sink or swim. This deal has to happen. And if it doesn't, I don't think it's going to be like you describe it kind of as like what would be a slow burn where, the PGA Tour would keep losing guys to Liv. I think this would be a more immediate existential crisis for the PGA Tour if it were denied. Because
I think that would have happened if they didn't do this. And then but I agree with you, Josh, that it's the end of the golf as we know it if it doesn't happen. Because
they've already pointed out that, like, yes, right now the PGA Tour is pulling from its reserves to cover the difference in what the tour and sponsors are bringing to the table for these elevated events. But it's already become pretty clear that they can't sustain this even for another season. Right. So this merger is like desperately necessary. Otherwise, everything that the PGA Tour has created over the last year and a half is dead. Like, it's done. There are no questions asked. So this deal really has to go forward. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Obviously, my guess is this fall we're going to really see things speed up. We'll get through the playoffs. And once we get through that in September, probably before the Ryder Cup, I think we're going to see a more detailed document come out of what this merger will look like. And that'll be when the real politics starts and when the FTC is really going to start to analyze things. But let's talk golf. Sepp Straka wins the John Deere Classic. Nate, it was quite a weekend, quite a Sunday for Sepp.
Yeah, there was a really crowded leaderboard going into Sunday. I think a few guys were one back of the lead. Brendan Todd held the 36 hole or the 48 hole lead, until 34 hole lead. But he had the one shot lead. He was able to make par on 18 to hold that. But then Sepp Straka comes out of nowhere. He starts the day 4 back, fires a 62 in round 4. That couldn't have been better, right? We'll talk about that double bogey he made on 18 here in just a second. But really, really impressive for Sepp Straka, a guy that's, Austrian trying to make that European Ryder Cup team, right? And this is surely going to help his chances to be there in Rome in the coming months here. But just a good, really, really, really good round by Sepp Straka, able to distance himself from the field and make that 62 to get the second career victory. But going back to 18, has a I don't know, about 150 yards and, probably a wedge or, a little bit more than that possibly, and just hooks it into the water on 18 left. And it was kind of jarring to me watching it, because at that point I think he's got a 3 or 4 shot lead at that point, maybe even more, 4 or 5, but just needed to put that on the green and make a 4, right? Doesn't need to make birdie and try to get to even better score. Needs to just avoid the big number there and just hits a poorly executed wedge shot that winds up in the water. He almost gets up and down for bogey after the penalty shot, but makes double, goes into the clubhouse, and then he's sitting there watching and just nerves, because he finishes probably close to an hour before that final group was done. So Sepp had to sit there and watch and then ended up going to the range a little bit after that. But I can't imagine what's going through his head after he makes double on the final hole and has to sit there and watch through, because it would have been a lot smoother sailing had he made a par.
Yeah, and just to kind of put that in historical context, only 2 other times that I could find had someone double bogeyed the 72nd hole and gone on to win. Keegan Bradley in 2015 and Emiliano Grillo earlier this year. Just a rare thing to see happen in general in golf. And also, I believe he started Thursday with a double bogey. Is that correct?
I'm not sure, but that does sound like that could be correct.
I know he didn't
play well on Thursday, so that could make sense.
I mean, he was over par. It was either that he double bogeyed the first hole or that he was over par in that first round. I think he might have been
definitely over par. Yeah, I know
he was over. And to come back and do what he did, one hell of a performance. Just quickly, I know we're not going to touch on it too much, but Ryder Cup, do you think this win this past weekend solidifies him on the Ryder Cup team? He's ranked like 27th or 28th in the world.
Yeah, I don't see how it doesn't. Josh, we can dive in more of that European Ryder Cup team here in the coming weeks, but I don't see how you don't take a winner who's now won twice on the PGA Tour and a guy like Sepp Straka not on your team, because he's obviously a player and playing well right now too. We'll see what he does in the next coming weeks here as we go over the pond, but I don't foresee him not being on Luke Donald's team.
All right, and U.S. Women's Open out west, prime time. There was so much energy heading into this event. What was the big takeaway? Obviously, you're going to talk to us about the winner, but man, what a weekend for women's professional game.
What a weekend is right. Everybody was so excited for this tournament, happening at Pebble Beach Golf Links in California. The first time the women have played this course. And it was so meaningful that Annika Sorenstam came out of retirement to play in the golf tournament. So one of your really huge names in the history of professional golf comes out and plays. That's a big event, right? And then you mentioned it being in California. It was in that primetime slot. They didn't do the PGA Tour thing and set them off at 6:45 local time, or 3:45 local time. Excuse me. They sent them out a little earlier, so they weren't finishing in the dark. But we'll talk a little more about the tournament. Allisen Corpuz is your winner. She won by 4 shots. The Hawaii native played very well all 4 rounds, especially in that final 2 rounds where she was in the last group both days. Just played rock solid and acted like she had been there before, because she hasn't. It's her first career LPGA Tour win. Pretty young player on the scene in LPGA Tour. Josh, we've talked the last few weeks about how good of a spot the LPGA Tour is with all these young stars. Allisen Corpuz, we didn't even mention her. So let's add that name to the list of other good players that are on this tour and making women's golf in such a great spot. But even more important, Josh, than the actual golf being played is the ratings that came out. They came out yesterday, and this is the most watched women's U.S. Open since 2014. So we're talking almost 10 years and how big of a spotlight this tournament was placed on. It was in prime time. That makes a huge difference. It went up against the PGA Tour event in Illinois that is the John Deere Classic, not as big, not an elevated event. So people were more tuned in, I think, to the Women's U.S. Open. You had an American in Allisen Corpuz and a couple other Americans contending, Rose Zhang to be one of them. Didn't necessarily contend, but she stayed in there till the final days.
Yep.
So just really impressive event put on by the LPGA, and most streamed golf event on NBC in history, which is really saying something. NBC Women's Golf has been around for a little while, and to be the most streamed event shows you where kind of the nation is going in terms of streaming and in terms of over cable. So that's pretty cool too. And finally, the highest purse ever for a women's golf event. Allisen Corpuz took home around $2 million for her win at Pebble Beach. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, and also just kind of a note here, players in the U.S. Women's Open had their expenses covered, and if you made the cut, 20 grand in your pocket. So a big on the dollars and cents side.
Yep.
Big. As far as Allisen is concerned, still a very young player, like you mentioned. She's only been around for a few seasons. I believe this is her third season. She's played in fewer than 50 events as a professional. And to have that first win come at a major at a time when everybody is talking about Rose Zhang, it puts the LPGA Tour in an incredible spot here with young talent, and frankly, talent that people are eager to watch. I think the streaming numbers that you just mentioned make that case pretty damn well.
And it's at Pebble Beach too, which just some huge names have won, including Tiger Woods, right? So you become the first woman to win at Pebble Beach. That's never going to be erased from the history books, and as just a really, really impressive feat. It looked like a couple times on Sunday when I was watching, she could have tripped up, made a bogey or a double, but she would always get up and down. She was missing a good amount of fairways on Sunday too, which isn't usually like her game. Josh, I think on the broadcast, they said during the LPGA Tour season, she hits over 80% of her fairways, which is just an amazing number. And one, I actually had to look it up to make sure that was true, because that just seems so crazy, but she played just really rock solid and didn't, wait for it all. She just kept her head in it and was able to come out with a victory. Yeah.
Incredible stuff. And like you said, it's going to be really interesting to watch the LPGA moving forward, just with the firepower and the star power that they now have. Speaking of star power, a quick note here. We got Cam Smith. He won Liv London this past weekend. Timing of the win, I think, obviously there's, with the merger talks going on, it seems some folks are eager to put Liv to rest. We don't know what the outcome of this is going to be for Liv Golf as a tour schedule moving forward. But timing this win is pretty big, in my opinion, because we're so close to the event that Cam Smith won last year, and it's a major. So I think his stock absolutely shot up in the last weekend, winning over there in London. Good stuff. Do you read much into that, or do you kind of take it as not really a needle mover?
I take it a little bit as a needle mover. He's playing well at the right time, and when we know Cam Smith has the game for this European golf link style too, right? Hits it down the middle, hits it hard, and knows how to play these golf shots. We remember last year when he putted on, I believe it was 17, kind of over that bunker, and he's about 30 yards in the hole and knocked it up there close, was able to get up and down. So Cam Smith playing well at the right time. He's going to be a force at Royal Liverpool here in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. And let's get everybody ready here for the Scottish Open. Nate, what do we have coming up?
Heading over to the Renaissance Club in Scotland as we get ready for the Open Championship happening first. But first, we got the Scottish Open. It's the second straight year this tournament's going to be co-sanctioned by the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour. That means that 75 DP World Tour players will be in the field, which is really cool because these guys are really competing well, and these names we don't see a ton besides the majors, right, all season. So it's really fun to see some of these names, and as we get closer and closer to the Ryder Cup, that a couple of these players will be involved too. So there'll be a lot of fun to watch. Xander Schauffele is your defending champion, and scoring is pretty volatile at these events, especially over in Europe. Last year we saw Xander win at 7 under par. A couple years ago the score was about 20 under par. So as European golf goes, the wind can be flying up one day and really be tricky for these players. So European golf can really kind of change the scoring. So we'll see what happens with that. We like to talk a lot about scoring on this podcast, right, Josh? So I wanted to make sure we threw that in there. And then one last thing about the Scottish Open, note the time change. You're going to wake up in the morning and golf's already going to be happening with about a 5-hour time difference. They tee off around 2 a.m. local time. That means that coverage on the Golf Channel will start at about 10:30 on Thursday morning. So when you wake up, be time to watch some golf. I always love to see that and love the Open Championship for that reason, because I myself am an early bird.
Yeah, everybody loves watching some early golf because we just don't get it that often. Usually we're waiting until 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursdays and Fridays to see golf. Let's talk a little bit about odds. Nothing really too surprising here, right? Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Patrick Cantlay, Schauffele, Hatton, they're your quote unquote favorites. Kind of seeing mixed odds, 650 to 1,000 for your favorites, 14 plus 1,400 plus 1,600 plus 2,000 for some of the other guys. Who stands out to you as your winner's pick if you're going to pick a winner?
They've been jumping around a little bit, Josh. I think Hovland was in the top 5 there for a little while. Now it's Tyrrell Hatton. Seems to be changing every day. So something to keep of note too. But I'm going to go with Xander. Won here last year, kind of started that run where he's won a bunch of tournament events and hasn't really won in the last year. He's been kind of sticking around. So I think Xander gets back in the winner's circle this week at the Renaissance Club, just like he did last year. He's about 16-1 right now on the books. Yeah,
I'm going to take Tyrrell Hatton. I took him this morning. He was 20-1 this morning when I took him, but it looks like earlier version of the odds had him at 16-1. So I guess he's one of the guys that's moving around a bit. I think he's been hanging around. He's been playing well enough. We've seen him on some leaderboards over the last 2 months. He hasn't really gotten into contention on Sunday, but I think playing over in Europe, it's entirely possible that we see that happen. And who knows, we could actually see him win.
You have a long shot for this week? Who are you taking there?
Ludwig Aberg. At 50-1 feels equal parts value in long shot. He's been playing some serious golf, right? He's coming off one of his most important showings this past weekend. And it feels like a place that he could be comfortable enough to win. Obviously, he's a very young player, so expectations, I guess, would be kind of low in what is clearly an elevated event in terms of who's playing. So, I think it would be it would be monumental for him to actually get a win. But at 50-1, with the way he's been playing, feels like a good long shot pick. Who do you have?
I got a very much so long shot pick. Another Euro coming in on this event. Yannick Paul coming in at 200-1. I don't think he'll necessarily win this event. He has played well. Winning this event would be a tremendous feat for him. But I more so look that he's going to really play well in this event because for reasons that I think we've talked about so far on this podcast, the European Ryder Cup is really starting to shape up and try to figure out who's going to be on their team. Yannick Paul is a guy that's played very well on the DP World Tour this season and a guy that it kind of fits those parameters to shape up on that team because they usually do take someone that's played well in the DP World Tour and not necessarily has played a lot on the PGA Tour during the year. So I think he's kind of a good fit for that spot. So if you take a look at Yannick Paul, he's got to keep playing well and it would be really good to play well on this stage in front of a lot of American eyes too, to kind of get his name assimilated with that team. So I expect Yannick to play well and just kind of taking a look at the odds this morning. I don't think he can win the event at 200-1. I want to make that clear, but top 40 plus 175, I think that's worth a look and something I'm going to have to look at this afternoon before the golf tournament gets started tomorrow.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like that doesn't necessarily feel like I don't want to call it a lock, but for the way he's been playing and being over there, a top 40 certainly seems like a good possibility.
Make sure you get your bets in, anything you want to get in tonight, because it's not like something you can wake up tomorrow and put more bets in before they teeing off around 2:15 Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you get your bets in before you hit the beds tonight on Wednesday night.
Hey, that is going to do it for this edition of Out of Bounds. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for the latest golf news, new episodes, and plenty of other content. Remember, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. See you next time on Out of Bounds.